Hello everyone! Today I will tell you about the film Civil War. Enjoy watching! The film begins in the near future with the President of the United States of America addressing the people. The President claims that the Civil War started by California, and Texas, dissatisfied with his rule, is almost over, and the rebels have been routed. Journalist Smith watches the speech from his hotel room. New York is outside the windows, and explosions are visible in the streets. During the day, Smith goes to a humanitarian aid distribution point, where the number of people in need and police officers is almost equal to the number of journalists recording what is happening. Having met colleagues, the woman puts on a vest with the inscription Press and does her job. Takes pictures. Smith sees how a young colleague, Jesse, was almost injured in a skirmish, and takes the girl away from the crowd to share the vest. The woman notices a suicide bomber running into the crowd and drags Jesse to the ground before the explosion thunders. Immediately after this, Smith grabs a camera, taking the first pictures of the victims. Leaving, Jesse turns around and takes a photo of his idol at work. Later, Smith meets his colleagues, journalists Joel and Sammy, at the hotel. Sammy is sure that after the fall of Washington, the states divided by the Civil War will clash with each other. Having learned that Smith and Joel are planning a trip to Washington to interview the president before he is killed by separatists, Sammy asks to go with them. Leaving for bed, the woman meets Jesse, who thanks her for her help and vest. Lying in the bathtub, she recalls the many manifestations of human cruelty which she has been an impartial witness to over the years of work. The morning paints the deserted streets and the optics of snipers perched on the roofs with a gentle light. After going down, Smith sees yesterday's girl in the car, which she really doesn't like. However, Joel has already agreed to take her with him to share professional experience and practice. The final destination is almost 1,400 kilometers away. The journey begins. The journalists go out onto a highway clogged with abandoned cars, between which they have to drive carefully. Next comes a military checkpoint, passing which they see refugees moving in the opposite direction. Noticing a gas station, Smith offers to fill up the tank, despite the fact that armed civilians are on duty there. Militiamen without coupons only sell gasoline much more expensively. Taking advantage of the moment, Jesse goes out to stretch his legs and goes to the car wash. A young guy with a machine gun follows, and then Smith. They see bodies hanging in the middle of the car wash. The young man with a machine gun proudly says that they are looters. He admits that he studied with the prisoners in the same school, and suggests that Jesse shoot one right in front of her. To ease the tension, Smith suggests taking a photo. The guy's purity gets the better of him, and he poses between the victims. Later in the car, Jesse says that she was confused in a serious situation, not thinking of taking a photo. Smith advises not to take the victim's suffering to heart. Whatever happened to them, they cannot influence it. Jesse begins to cry from the stress, but quickly pulls herself together. As they drive through a parking lot full of destroyed Humvees, Smith asks Jovel to slow down. She calls the girl to the wrecked helicopter so that she can take a few pictures, distracted from the previous incident. Settled at a rest stop 500 miles from Washington, the journalists enjoy the sounds of gunfire in the night and tracers in the sky. Smith complains to her mentor that she is discouraged by the very fact that a flashpoint has occurred in her homeland. Jowl drowns her sorrows in fear of the shootout they will witness tomorrow in alcohol. The next day, the journalists reach the scene of a clash. Armed men in civilian clothes are exchanging fire with men in uniform. The journalists, having joined the first, document what is happening. When a fighter is pinned down by fire, the squad throws smoke bombs and covers him. But running to their own, several bullets still hit him. He is dragged around the corner already unconscious. Smith circles nearby, dispassionately recording what is happening, as does Jesse. The squad makes its way inside the building, slowly clearing it of defenders. The shooters carefully creep along the corridors, climb the stairs, trying to find the military. The civilians finish off the first wounded man they come across without providing medical assistance and move on, allowing the journalists to film in safe territory. Jesse carefully approaches the dead man with a camera. After the battle, Joel happily chats with the civilian commander, while the other shooters bring the opponents in uniform outside, line them up and shoot them with a heavy machine gun. To the delight of Jesse's lens, Smith only lazily looked back, continuing to smoke. When there are less than 500 kilometers left to Washington, the journalists arrive at a refugee camp located in a stadium. Smith brings Jesse lunch. She is in the stands developing film in a mobile lab. The woman shares her own professional experience before they look at the first photos. A girl freezes in a frame with a dying wounded man, whom a colleague praises. Having waited out the night in the camp, the journalists continue their way through towns that bear the imprint of the Civil War in the form of fires, deserted streets, burned-out cars. Jesse takes pictures of colleagues and their emotionless faces, tired of expressing sympathy over the years. The next stop is a small town that, it would seem, has not been touched by what is happening throughout the country. The travelers look into a clothing store where Joel asks the saleswoman if they are aware of the Civil War. She replies that their town refrained from taking sides. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Smith tries on a dress. Jesse takes a photo as a keepsake, having first made her laugh. Having gone out for a smoke with Sammy, the woman notices snipers on duty on the roof. With less than 200 miles to go until Washington, the journalists come across an unfinished New Year's fair and a dead body lying in the road. They stop in confusion, wondering if it's safe to continue. Sammy suggests going back and taking a different road, while Smith zooms in on a nearby mansion. Joel slowly drives closer. An unseen sniper from inside the house opens fire on them. Noticing the sniper pair in ambush, the journalists move closer to them, provoking the enemy shooter to open fire. A conversation with the soldiers reveals that they don't know who exactly they're dueling with or whose side they're on. Someone is trying to kill them, and they're trying to kill them in return. While Joel is talking and Jesse is taking pictures, Smith is lying on the ground, admiring the flowers. Soon the sniper pulls the trigger, a shot rings out, and the journalists continue their journey. While driving, while Joel and Jesse are dozing, Smith notices a car swerving along the highway behind them. Sammy advises them to slow down, letting it pass without looking at the driver. But the pursuers, having drawn level, drive alongside, attracting attention with their horns. Joel, awakened by the sounds, recognizes the passenger as a Chinese colleague from Hong Kong named Tony. Tony and his partner are also going to Washington to see the president. Joel let it slip to him before leaving. Overjoyed at the meeting, Tony moves into their car while it is moving. Inspired, Jesse also switches places, after which Tony's driver steps on the gas, disappearing into the spot. The journalists follow, worried that Jesse has disappeared with some unknown Asian man. Tony assures them that everything will be fine, but Smith yells at him. Because of this, they almost crash into an oncoming truck, pulling over to the side of the road. The journalists find the Chinese man's car near a farm. The doors are open, and there is no one inside. Smith turns onto the road where his colleagues presumably went. The journalists find the driver and Jesse surrounded by armed men in military uniform. What's worse, they are busy dumping a bunch of corpses directly from the back of a dump truck into one large grave, sprinkling the bodies with lime. Joel is sure that nothing will happen. The guys are clearly military men from the Western forces, which means they respect press badges. Sammy objects that they will be killed as unnecessary witnesses. Leaving Sammy, the journalists go to the military. Joel introduces himself to the chief as a journalist and says that the prisoners are his colleagues, with whom they are going to make a report on the opening of a university campus in a neighboring city. In response, the soldier shoots Tony's partner, killing him on the spot. The conversation immediately ceases to be casual. Joel says that they are Americans. The soldiers are interested in which side they support in the current war. Having learned that Joel is from Florida, the soldier turns to Jesse to clarify that she is from Missouri. The next in line is Smith, who was born in Colorado. When it comes to Tony, it turns out that he is from Hong Kong. The soldier reacts to this by shooting him in the chest. Joel asks to stop shooting, which only provokes the ultranationalists. At this moment, Sammy appears behind the wheel of a car, which he knocks the soldiers into the grave with the corpses. Jesse is forced to jump down as well, dodging the impact of the bumper. Having recovered among the dead bodies, the girl climbs up where Joel helps her. The third ultranationalist, who went to the toilet, grabs a machine gun and opens fire on them. Having reached the highway, Joel is sobbing from the stress he's experienced, and Jesse is sick. Sammy says that they need to stop. He is wounded and cannot drive the car. Having transferred the old man to the back, Joel jumps behind the wheel and drives on. They rush forward through the forest engulfed in flames. Early in the morning, they reach a military base in Charlottesville, where the forces of the Western Coalition have concentrated. While Jesse sadly looks at the dead Sammy, Joel screams and screams, releasing pent-up fear, pain, and rage. When her colleague's body is loaded into a zinc coffin, Smith deletes his posthumous photo from her camera. Then she finds Joel. He has learned from his colleagues that Western forces are already storming Washington. It will not be possible to interview the president until the end of the war. The next morning, while Smith is washing the car's interior of blood, the columns move to Washington. Realizing that since they have already arrived, it would be foolish to miss a historical event, the journalists follow to document the final assault. Violent clashes with shelling of historical monuments and the defenders entrenched in them are underway in the city. Inspired by the chance, Jesse almost runs into bullets for the sake of a good shot. But the tired Smith suddenly becomes satiated with the violence and does not really take any pictures. She sees soldiers launching rockets at the Lincoln Memorial, helicopters hovering in the streets, shelling the defenders' positions, tanks overcoming barricades. The photographers move along with the assault squad. The mortarmen take up positions on the roof to fire at the White House positions where the president has taken up residence. The main forces are also converging there for the decisive blow. The defenders knock out one Humvee in front of the journalists. Jesse clicks on the burning crew. The arriving tanks help split the firing point. Joel leads Smith after the assault troops. The equipment breaks through the gates and enters the inner territory of the White House, from which the Secret Service is at this time escorting the president to put him in an armored motorcade. 3 vehicles break through the troops, crashing into the barriers. The limousine rams the Humvee. Watching as he is being machine-gunned, Smith suddenly comes to his senses and realizes that the head of state is not inside. She calls her colleagues to follow her into the White House while the soldiers shoot the passengers. The commander of one platoon sees this and follows them. The journalists enter the empty White House, which the attackers have suddenly lost interest in. The soldiers who enter after them wave them and go in search of the president. Of course, the photographers follow. In the press room, the secretary offers to discuss the terms of the president's surrender in exchange for security guarantees. But the separatists simply shoot her and move on. A shootout with the Secret Service begins in the corridors. The advance is slowed by the need to eliminate the guards. Nevertheless, the soldiers slowly but surely move forward, clearing room after room. Jesse follows them, photographing the most spectacular shots, not thinking at all about the risk. Even Smith stays behind the soldiers, not sticking her out once again. At some point, the girl runs out into the corridor to take a photo until the soldiers suppress the guards with fire. Smith jumps out after her to push her to the floor. A fallen Jesse takes a series of pictures as a bullet pierces her senior colleague, who falls dead next to her. Joel calls the girl to follow him, striving for the greatest report of his life. The separatists have already dragged the terrified president by his feet from under the table when Joel appears. He tells the soldiers to slow down and asks the president to say one last thing. He asks not to kill him. When Joel gets what he wants, the soldiers shoot the president. Jesse captures this moment in a series of pictures. At this point, the film, like the life of the head of state, ends. Unlike the Civil War,